As we start off, I'm curious if you were to open up your chat function and pop in chat, what is it that you know about the Williamson program? Just so that I can get an idea of what kind of knowledge you're bringing in, who you might have heard about Williamson from. And if it's completely new to you, that's okay too. It'll just give me a bit of an idea. And while you're doing that, I might speculate a bit on the question of why Williamson and why now? The world is facing some pretty big challenges right now. We are needing to adapt and change. And you might have, just like I do, things that are important to you that you would like to be different for you, for your organisation, for your family, for your community. And when you think about some of those things, you might have a picture in your mind of what your fondest aspiration for that is. And then you might also think about what the current reality is. And between those things lies a gap. And there are lots of challenges in that gap that need the exercise of leadership to create change, to make progress. And so if leadership is what it takes to bridge that gap, then perhaps Williamson is for you, and it's for now. It's about you making a choice to live your life stepping into opportunities for leadership that exist all around us on issues that you care about. And Williamson will give you not only the tools, but also the mindset and the confidence to do that. So if I have a look now on the chat and the little gems that you've popped in there for me, I can see that there are some folks who haven't heard a lot about Williamson. Yes, that there are also alumni who are evangelical about it. And in fact, Williamson has been going now for a little over 30 years. And what we're finding now is that parents are recommending that their children do Williamson. So from 30 years ago, how about that? We're going to need like a mother, daughter, father and son rule or something, I think. It does have a really positive word of mouth. It is a challenging program. It will absolutely put you out of your comfort zone. We have organisations that continue to send their people to us. So I think that speaks for a lot in terms of the difference that they perceive in their people and in their organisation from folks participating in the program. And what else? Yes, board members have recommended it, friends have recommended it, colleagues have recommended it. Yes, and that it creates connections. So something that about Williamson that is very different to other programs is the ways in which we curate the participants who join the program, so that rather than you might think about your networks for professional development now, for example, they can be around particular subject matters or industries. Williamson will push you outside of that, in that you will be interacting with people from different sectors across government, not-for-profit, private organisations. So what you will walk away with from participating in Williamson is a broader and deeper understanding of approaches to leadership and leadership as an activity versus a role or a title. You will probably have a greater sense of your personal obligation to contribute to our society and to exercise your agency in that. A confidence in exercising leadership, greater ability to engage more effectively in change, and to also be better equipped to operate in complex environments. So particularly in matrixed environments where you're needing to work across sectors and across organisations without necessarily having authority or a title to do that. How do you actually work with people to understand what it is how they see the world, what it is that's important to them, and work with them on the change that you're seeking to implement. So having said all of that, some info for you, I suppose, about what's different about Williamson is that we're a highly experiential program, and also we focus very much on vertical development. A lot of the development that you might have experienced so far, so if you think about school or university or sometimes the learning that you do at work, is horizontal development. So it's focused on your skills. It's technical knowledge that can be collected, measured and displayed. In Williamson, our focus is on vertical development. And what that is, it's about our thinking capacity, our awareness, our imagination, our ability to conceive in more kind of complex, strategic and interdependent ways. And an analogy that can be kind of easier to grasp about this is that horizontal development is like installing a new app on your phone, that you download. Vertical is like upgrading the entire operating system of your phone. And so that's what we focus on in Williamson. And over the years, we've developed ways of doing that. I'm just going to share my screen to explain a little bit about, so picking up on what Nathan shared about how it is that we do things. So we have a learning model that is about building a really strong holding environment with you and with others on the program, so that we can what we call regulate the heat. So put you entirely out of your comfort zone to stretch you and to challenge you, all the time driven though with heart, purpose and ethics. Part of the program is about, well, all of the program is underpinned by principles and competencies for leadership. We use storytelling with purpose, and it's all about disrupting and kind of changing the way that you exercise leadership and that you make progress on complex challenges. In terms of how the program looks over the course of a year, this is the Williamson wheel, and the alum will probably be having flashbacks to seeing this wheel on a monthly basis as part of their program. So Williamson is comprised of a series of leadership days. They're the days that are in green, that you're exploring leadership principles and competencies. We also explore a series of themes, and they're in blue. So when you think about issues facing humankind, things like climate change, COVID, the challenges you're facing in your families, work, personally, at the heart of those sit central themes, and we spend time throughout the year exploring those themes. So themes of belonging, privilege, power, agency, prosperity, and enchantment. And in doing so, we're inviting you to think about systems and how it's possible to recognise those systems at play at the heart of the many issues that we face and the common threads that sit within them. We also have a series of immersives. It starts with the Welcome Immersive in February on Taungurung Country in Marysville, and it concludes back again on Taungurung Country in November. And we also visit Shepparton, Yorta Yorta Country, and Warrnambool, which is kind of Gunditjmara and Ma Country over the course of the year. And as well, you will be having the opportunity, and this is something that's core to Williamson, you, just as much as we share these concepts with you, we do them in a way that is entirely experiential. So you will have the opportunity to work collectively on a challenge that is important to you amongst the group. It's known as collectives. And all of that comprises the Williamson experience. You will have the program dates. You can see them on the website. And it's about, well, you can budget for at least 2 full days a month of times when you'll be in program, as well as about at least 2 days preparation per month as you prepare for it. I'll stop sharing that now, though, and hand back over to Nathan.
Thanks, Lisa. That's, a really comprehensive overview of the program. But many people are probably still going, oh, wow, okay, what did all that mean in real terms? Because it's obviously a lot of really high concept things. And actually, it probably it takes people a long time to, even when they're on the program, to figure it out what it is they're doing. But that's the beauty of it, I think. So to help you with that, we've brought along 3 alumni of the program. And I might just go through in alphabetical order and introduce Jason Coonan, who was an alumni of the 21 year. Jason, would you like to share, I guess, with the group your experiences of doing the Williamson Community Leadership Program?
Thanks, Nath. And yeah, as Nath mentioned, we were last year's cohort, which was an interesting journey, not the least of which because I guess we're a little bit hybrid in that we had a wonderful time being together in person, and then we went into this lockdown mode, which I'm still tremendously in awe of Lisa and Ange and all the team at LV for managing that type of situation and that experience. But at the end of it, and when I reflect upon it, and I saw some of the comments in the chat about not really clear what the Williamson program is. I was one of those people, so don't worry about it. And as I said just a moment ago, a lot of the things still sink in. They take days, weeks, months, and sometimes years. So don't my advice from that perspective is, don't be too anxious that we can't sit here and define it in all its details for you. Although one of the things, as I reflect upon the year, that I think I did make a bit of a mistake about was that, it was purely about professional development. And I think Lisa made some really salient observations there that you do go a hell of a lot broader and really learn a lot about yourself sometimes under quite challenging circumstances. And so, yeah, when I sort of think about my journey, I'm glad that I came into it with an open mind and I didn't know too much about it because I found that really sort of put me into a good place just to accept and go with whatever we were experiencing at the time. And depending upon your personality, sometimes that can be easy, sometimes that can be hard. But really, coming out of it and sitting here in front of you, what are some of the highlights from my perspective? And really is about being able to improve my understanding of how to work with diverse sets of people and complex systems, because I know a little bit more or a lot more about myself in some cases. So can really understand how I manage myself and manage other people, particularly in those leadership situations, which now I'm much more confident in stepping into. That was one thing. People would sit back and say, oh, Jace, you know what you do and all those types of things. But there was always a hesitancy there, and I think Williamson has helped lower that hesitancy for me to lead in situations outside of where I am the technical expert. And that's often the challenge for a lot of people. But now, I'm much more confident in stepping into things, where I feel strongly about, but might not know a huge amount about. But I've really got, the year really gave me those skills to sort of work through that. And I think last but not least, I was really, really surprised by how quickly and deeply our cohort, and Katie will have a view on this as well, forged some pretty deep relationships pretty bloody quickly. And we often wondered about what type of wizardry Lisa and her friends were orchestrating in the background there, where we seemed to come together from really different backgrounds, but come together really well and really closely in that safe crucible that Lisa talked about. That was totally unexpected and probably one of the things that I cherish most about it. So that's a little bit of my experience. And you know, I won't talk forever, because conscious everyone else needs to jump in, and look forward to answering whatever questions you want to ask.
Thanks, Jason. There's a couple of things that you mentioned which came up, I guess. You know, I've just spent 2 days at a HR summit learning about the trends and everything that's going on in the world of HR at the moment. And one of the things is that, you know, COVID has completely disrupted workforces, working environments, the way people work. And to be able to thrive in this new world of work, you need to be able to create a sense of belonging in your teams, a sense of connection, particularly working in remote environments. And so how do you do that? How do you create that sense of belonging and connection with such a diverse group of people that you work with, or the stakeholders that you work with? And one of the things that Williamson does is it gives you that breadth, it gives you that exposure to society, it gives you an understanding of the themes and the way people interact with systems, to be able to give you that I guess a grounding there where you can actually build connection, because you've got a far bigger exposure to society. So I think that's, Jason, one of the things that has come through in your experience. The other thing that came through there is kind of leading without answers, and having the vulnerability, yet the confidence to be able to do that. And that is also hugely important in the new world of work, where people are looking to leaders for direction, for safety, and yet things move so fast, we don't always have all the answers. So how do you lead without answers? So thank you. Katie, I might ask you to share your experiences of the program.
Thank you. Yes, love to. Very happy to be here today to talk about the last, well, it feels like a year and a half, I guess, because there's still a lot of activity going on, isn't there, Jason, from our year? So I applied because I had this quote and this question on my mind for a while about how I could develop myself further, and professionally and personally. And the quote that I'm referring to is by Frederick Buechner, who's an American writer. And he wrote, "At what points do my talents and deep gladness meet the world's deep need?" So Williamson really, for me, certainly life-changing, and you know, a huge a core memory, as you might say. And I think what I loved most about it, as Jason alluded to, about that it's not just professional development. And I think perhaps some people do come into it expecting it to be business-like, and there's certainly, you know, it is certainly very professional. But what I loved about it was that we all had to bring our whole selves to really get the most out of it. And that certainly it included looking internally and knowing yourself really well. So having the opportunity and the time, and also the structures around how to look at that. So thinking about your own values, how you live day to day is how you live your life. Those elements of starting within and then moving out further to, you know, the people around you, then to organizations, and then to much larger systems on a much broader scale. I think the other thing that's really special about Williamson is the way that it's facilitated. So I think I've been a teacher for 20 years as well, and something that you might, I guess, understand, we've all been through the education system. A really good teacher makes it look really easy. And the way that Williamson is facilitated is so seamless. And as also Jason mentioned, how did we get to the point where we were able to be so close with each other and be able to really get stuck into some issues in a space where we felt supported, and a space that was psychologically safe to do so. And I think that's really testament to the way that the leadership program is actually facilitated really thoughtfully and intentionally. That's not something you're going to find everywhere. The opportunity to work on and present your true north, your 5-minute opportunity to share, you know, where you've been, who you are, and where you're going on your leadership journey, is really profound. And I think you get as much out of that as presenting it as you do getting to know your cohort. And that's exactly, I don't find personally any other aspect of my life where you actually get to have those opportunities. Since the program has completed, which was really sad that it finished, I wanted it to keep going forever. We've been able to still connect as a group, and of course that takes effort. But one thing just recently last week, a group of us got together who were all individualists, you know, in terms of where we are on our leadership development profile, and did a peer case consultation. And I got to present the case for our first one. We're going to do 6 over the next 6 months, once a month. And I just felt so absolutely grateful for the opportunity with these amazing people that I've developed relationships with over the year, to be able to step into a process that we all understand, we've practiced it for the whole year, and really know again that we've got that base of trust and support and love for each other. So we're able to then share something very vulnerable with the group and know that because there's a structure around the peer case consultation process, that you will get interesting feedback, interesting ways of looking at the situation. So that's just a practical example of how into the future, your leadership, Williamson Leadership Program journey continues. I think it's a lifelong experience, really, because, and again, it's absolutely, as anything in life, it's what you put in is what you get out. And the more that you can, be vulnerable and be open to whatever might occur, and also contribute to the best of your abilities, the better experience and the more rich it's going to be for you. I think in terms of some considerations I had about actually applying, the time commitment was one concern. I noted that there was, as I told my manager, there's 17 work days, and that was okay. I was able to have that leave, and financially, it's certainly a commitment, but absolutely an absolute incredible opportunity, I think, and well done for coming along today and being curious about what this is. And I'm happy to, if anyone ever wanted to contact me personally, to talk further. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, it's that True North exercise, if you haven't done that before, is incredibly powerful, and it talks to purpose, and purpose again is so important now in the new world of work, having that clarity of purpose, your own purpose and connection to what you're doing in your career and the impact that you're looking to make, but also being able to help others find purpose. And I think, as a leader now, it's moved from, I think, being this idea of productivity police to actually to more of a coaching, mentor, guiding relationship with your team, and helping them find purpose and connecting to their work, to their organization. It all comes through, these types of skills come through the Williamson program. The other thing that you mentioned is alumni. So we have a really active alumni group at Leadership Victoria. We have an alumni engagement program. We are doing and trialing many different initiatives at the moment to see, and we're, in many respects, we're alumni led at Leadership Victoria. So what we'd like to be as an organisation is a community of leaders, and being able to facilitate leadership activity that is going to make a difference in the community. And so you would be joining that group, that community of leaders who together with the resources of Leadership Victoria can go out and achieve that impact that you're looking to make in the broader world. Finally, I'd like to introduce Damian Stock, who did the program perhaps the year before Jason and Katie. Damian, welcome.
Thanks, Nathan. And thanks, Nathan, Lisa and David, for the opportunity to talk about something that was, pretty important, and I think I'll remember for a very long time. And it was great also to be invited to talk, because it allowed me to reflect on the year, which was it was in 2020. It was a disruptive year for all of us, but it feels like a very long time ago for me now. It's actually really enjoyable thinking about how I condense that into a few minutes. I'm not going to talk about the program at all. I'm just going to talk about how it impacted me. And I'd like to talk about that in probably three ways. My work, how I work probably, my career, and probably just me. So I'm a lawyer by background. I've spent about 15 years in non-profit legal service delivery, always community legal centres and legal aid, that type of work. Always focused on social change though, and seeking improvements to society. And Lisa touched on this before, but you can get trapped in an echo chamber of sorts. You know, I work really closely with a great network and colleagues. We all think we're using law for social change. But you don't often get outside of that network. And the Williamson Community Leadership Program expressly and quite deliberately provides a range of unusual voices from other disciplines with the direct intention of sharing their experience. So they set up just wonderful opportunities for discussion where you can meet people that you would never meet, but you can also feel really comfortable to ask them very direct questions and require them to be as honest as they ought to be. It expands your range of inputs and gives that intentional place to discuss the various topics that are on their wheel that Lisa showed you earlier. I think it was of particular interest to me, as has always been, still is, but over the year was how to foster community agency, how to get people better understanding how to be in control of their own lives. And I was able to put questions which changed over time. During the year, it was great to even be focusing on the art of question asking. To a range of leaders on structural means to increase agency. I remember at one session we met with Michelle Grattan, and I asked her what was one thing that politicians and the media could do, just one thing that would increase community agency. And she didn't have an answer to that immediately. I was like, yeah, I stumped Michelle Grattan, that's great. But it was great to be able to have those kind of audiences and ask something that you care deeply about and get a real diversity of inputs towards. And that's definitely changed my approach to community agency, but also just the way I go about my work. In terms of my career, so it expands the network of people that you consider your friends and close colleagues. Since the program, I've called on and been called upon by a number of my colleagues and friends from the program across a whole bunch of different fields. We were responding to the hard lockdown of the public housing estates in July 2020, and things were a mess that Saturday afternoon. I could pick up the phone and speak to one of my Williamson comrades from that worked at Red Cross and just cut through what was a real mess right then. I'm a CEO now. I was a new CEO during the program, but I've just recently applied and obtained another CEO role in a regional area. But before doing so, one of my colleagues from the program I knew was in that regional area, and I could just pick up the phone and ask them what it was really like. They just gave me all the time in the world. It is genuinely, I think Nathan said that they work magic or something. It's surprising how close you get to the people that you do the course with. And you do genuinely feel like part of the community after the course as well. Just to me personally, so I was encouraged to apply by the CEO that I was chief of staff to in late 2019 at a non-profit organisation. I've been a technical expert for 15 years and I was moving into executive roles. There were a staff of about 400. None of them were my direct reports. And so it was really encouraged to me by a very experienced CEO as a means of learning about influence without any formal power. That's how it started. I then started in an early CEO role. But it established my confidence in establishing, it accelerated my confidence in establishing processes that hold space and facilitate other people, rather than having the answer, rather than exercising some sort of formal authority. And I've just recently merged two non-profit legal centres with 80 years of combined history. None of that was through technical expertise. It was all facilitating a space for people to work together on what the new organisation would look like. And a recurrent theme over the year was that exploring adaptive challenges rather than technical challenges, to which there's no one answer, that invite a range of opinions and ways forward. I think one of the biggest things that I maybe sunk in properly over the year was that there's no one person managing things for society. There's no one answer to how we develop things better, but it's a collaborative art. It's not a science. And Williamson really helped me relax into that space with confidence. I mean, yes, it's a considerable investment of time that you're guaranteed to learn a lot from, unlike any other program that I've seen or heard of. And one that you'll always remember, I think, in the arc of your life. You'll never forget. You end up with 50 good mates, and genuinely part of the community. So yeah, I'd say go for it, because yeah, I certainly benefited from it. But yeah, happy to answer any questions as well.
Thanks, Damian. Yeah, that was a fantastic recollection, and a lot of one thing that you raised there was the difference between a technical challenge and an adaptive challenge. If you're not familiar with that term, you'll hear it a lot in the program. If I could summarize it, a technical challenge is a challenge that has a known solution. If you don't have the expertise in-house, you go and get a consultant or hire someone who has the answer to that problem. An adaptive challenge is, as Damian was saying, is a challenge where there's no one technical answer to this problem. It's a problem that sits in the heart, in the mind, and in our guts. And you have to, yeah, there's an art to moving forward and making progress on challenges like that. And that is really what the Williamson Community Leadership Program aims to equip you to be able to do. Okay, I might open the floor now for questions. So if you have not used the raise hand function before, if you go to the bottom of your screen, there's a button that says reactions. If you click on that button, you'll see then that there's a raise hand function. So please, if you would like to ask a question, please use the raise hand function, and I'll invite you to take yourself off mute and ask the question. James has a question.
Thank you. Thank you, Nathan. I have two questions. First, is the program more suited for people in the non-profit community sector, or the business sector, or the government sector? I'm just wondering whether the skills picked up in the program are specific to any of these three sectors. Is it non-profit / community, business, or the government, which is the public sector? And I have a second question, if it's okay. How are participants assessed in the program? What assessments do they need to complete in order to be considered as having completed and passed the program?
Who'd like to take that one on? Jason, thanks.
I'll take on part one.
Mm-hmm.
James, look, I guess you heard it from Katie and Damian and I. You know, you really sort of, I guess, probe some pretty deep parts of your personality and experiences throughout the year, and my personal view is that positions you well to cope and to lead in all sorts of forums, whether that's not-for-profit, whether that's in industry, government, whether that's at home, whether that's on the street. You know, it really sits like a dirty great big helicopter that kind of influences basically everything you do while you're awake, and probably while you're asleep. So yeah, you know, and I think, you know, as perhaps might have come through all of us, you know, really is choose your own adventure throughout the year. And so from that perspective, I cannot see how it could not be relevant to whatever anyone is doing at the particular time.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jason. And to answer your question, James, I might just talk about assessment. There are no formal assessments on this program. So, yep, no essays, no marking, anything like that. It's really the one requirement that you need to pass the program is an 80% attendance at events. That's the one requirement. And of course, then the more you put into the program, the more you get out of it.
Thank you. But I'm sure that there will be lots of project work discussions, you know, or even reports or some papers that we'll have to complete. Is that right?
Who'd like to? Katie, do you want to talk about?
Yeah, sure, I can talk to that.
Yeah.
I guess it's again, there's different aspects of the program that require you to do reading, thinking, writing, discussing, and experimenting, in your general life, whether that's work or personal. And, again, it's sort of up to you as to how much, you engage in that. But it absolutely makes a huge difference to be prepared for the leadership days and the theme days from the reading material that is shared, and also so much respect, for the reading material and viewing. It is contemporary current issues, in either, politics or in the world generally. So it's just the fact that the issues are so pertinent to where we are now, means that we can, that you have the opportunity to practice, the art of asking questions and practice some of the leadership capabilities within the context that is a real context. So yeah, I think there's no formal reports as such, but there are definitely times where you need to be documenting. And my process was to write notes in a notebook that I've got all my notebooks still that I refer to sometimes, based off the readings and things. And then when you're preparing your true north, that is another way. I guess it's seen as an assignment, as you might see it like that. But and of course, the way that you prepare for that is personal as well. But yeah, I hope that answers that, James.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Lee.
Thanks, Nathan. Before I ask the question, I'd just like to say thanks for creating this welcoming space to learn about the opportunity. I think it's been quite good so far. A question for the alumni here, and thanks again for your time. Thinking back to when you're in this position that we're in now of decision making around this opportunity and even being in such a session, what's the one piece of advice that you'd give yourself at that time about this opportunity?
Can I have a go at answering that? I didn't put my hand up, sorry. I didn't know what it was about when I first went to the in-first session, and I was weighing it up with something like an MBA or something really technical. And I think the fact that James perhaps asked that question twice then reflects that we're not used to doing things that we're not assessed by. It would almost be easier if we could put in an essay. This isn't like that, and the assessment doesn't end. The path of development doesn't end, I suppose. I think that the time commitment is considerable, and you've got to be ready for that. When I did it in 2020, COVID first came along. Nathan spoke about the heroic efforts of Lisa and Ange and others to deliver a hybrid course, and we did it for the first time the year before. I think there was a director of a hospital that might have pulled out, but otherwise we all stuck with it, 50 or 60 of us, and through what was a pretty tricky year where we're all time poor and responding. So I think if I had to give any advice to myself back then, it would be be prepared for it, because the more you put in, the more you get out. But don't let that be a reason not to do it, I would say.
Joe.
Thanks, Nathan. I've heard a couple of times folks talking about this, the program pushing you outside your comfort zone. And I just wanted to probe about that a little bit deeper, in terms of, I imagine that the caliber of people who are putting their hand up for this and getting through and engaging in the program are probably reasonably self-aware individuals who reflect on things in their own life and how that impacts their work and their leadership. So I'm curious about what that looks like in terms of pushing yourself outside your comfort zone when possibly you're probably comfortable in a lot of zones.
I can speak a little bit to that, Joe. I think at the start of the year, we talked a little bit about what being out of your comfort zone might look like for you. For some people who perhaps don't speak up as much in a social environment or an environment where there's lots of people, because there are 60 of you, that might look like trying to speak up more, which is you know, can be scary, especially as you get to know each other. Some people talked about imposter syndrome, you know, were they worthy of being in the room with everybody else, you know, but actually, you know, when you think about it, we're all humans doing a job and doing our best. So I think, you know, the unconditional positive regard for each other certainly helps that. But for some people who do speak up a lot all the time, that getting out of their comfort zone is actually holding back and pulling back and allowing space for other people to speak. And that was quite an interesting aspect of our time together, in that we had discussions around that occasionally. And I guess the camaraderie around looking out for each other as well. And so noticing people in your peer group or your buddy, or, you know, people you've connected with, noticing how they are responding in a session, and seeing whether, you know, they need to support in either speaking up more or needing time to digest something, or, you know, whatever it might be. So I think it's just being, like you're saying, you're very self-aware, but putting yourself out of your comfort zone is depending on, you know, where you're at that time, and, you know, looking to others as well.
Thanks, Katie. Jason, you had your hand up. Did you want to contribute to that question as well?
Yeah, just sort of one of the best pieces of advice I got from an amazing person called Christine Couture in the very early stages of the program. And if you're lucky enough, you'll get to speak to her, and you'll get to hear from her, and perhaps get this advice too. She said very early on, go and find the person that is most different to you and spend time with them. Now, that's bloody challenging. and so from my perspective, yeah, you know, that was another good example of, you know, how this program really probably pushes you harder than most other things you do. And I thought it was great advice, because, you know, it's just part of that thing that, you know, you often learn the most from, you know, those hard times in life, from the losses, from the people that you butt heads with. But, you know, you're really sort of learning the skills to be open-minded, to listen, and to try and understand where people are coming from. And you know, that's so key to the whole leadership equation at the end of the day. But yeah, it's not easy.
Thanks, Jason. Brian and James, I notice you've got hands up as well. I'll come to you shortly. There's a good question in the chat from Kurt. Kurt says there are a number of leadership programs in the market that would echo much of what has been described regarding program intent and impact. If pressed, what's the Williamson point of difference? Now, Mark, who's on our board, has answered that question in the chat, and you're welcome to have a look at Mark's answer there. But would Jason, Katie, or Damian, would you like to also contribute to that question? Yes, Jason.
I think one of the things, you know, I'd imagine, and look, I haven't done a million of these types of courses, but probably to the point that Mark's making, I'd really struggle to see the immersive aspect coming through from a lot of the other stuff that, you know, I was mentioning early on, that, you know, perhaps is more straight down the line professional development. And, you know, to the point about being challenged, you know, a lot of stuff comes out of the woodwork in this course or in this program that you wouldn't expect out of some other courses. So, you know, I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of all the other similar programs, but, you know, I think you could take it from probably the alumni here, you know, the group of 50, 60 alumni that Katie and I have been part of. And Damian might have a comment as well, but almost all of us have said that this was a unique experience. All of us having done various other courses, but all saying, yep, this was really different and well worth doing.
Thanks, Jason. We do run to time on this program. I noticed there's 3 questions to get to. So please, if you do have any questions that you would really like to ask, please don't miss the opportunity. Please put your hand up. I'll try and get to them all in the last 8 minutes. Brian.
Thanks, Nathan. And not as if I'm trying to be pessimistic. I'm just, Joe's question was excellent in regards to, I find the program quite abstract and actually attacking things from different angles, which is kind of hard to get your head around. And therefore I'm trying to attack it from a different angle in terms of how many people generally drop out of the program and what is the reason why they drop out? Is it, obviously there's the time commitment, but do some people just really struggle with that grasping emotionally and really digging deep and they just find it too much? Or yeah, I don't know if you can add any color to add to that and try and clarify that abstract thing about the program, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, Lisa, I thought that you'd be a good one to answer that one.
So part of it is the way that the application and the interview process gives us insight into whether or not people are ready for Williamson. And so the selection process asks you to respond to a series of questions, and then there's an interview as well. And part of that is we're trying to get a sense of where are you at kind of developmentally in terms of where you see your challenges being. And then we will, if you are accepted into the program, we will support you throughout the year. In terms of folks who might not complete the program, it's actually quite an unusual thing, and it's maybe one a year, perhaps. And typically what it is that folks are going through some really big personal stuff, and they just don't really have the bandwidth to contribute to the program. Keeping in mind that it is an experience putting you outside of your comfort zone, and there's having compassion for yourself. There are times in your life where you simply can't do that, and you need to prioritise looking after yourself, looking after your loved ones, or looking after a major crisis in an organisation or a community. But having said that, each person in the program, and Ange, myself, and Em, who works on the program, we're there to support you as much as we can.
Thanks, Lisa. James.
Thank you, Nathan. I know that this program teaches that leadership is an activity and is not a role or a title. I'm just being very pragmatic and practical here, okay? I'm wondering whether to be let into the program, the participants have to be holding on to a kind of a managerial role or some kind of a team leadership role, some kind of a supervisory role in a professional capacity in order to be let into the program. I'm just wondering, because some applicants might have aspirations. So I would like to hear the team's view on this. Yeah, thank you.
Lisa, did you want to take that one again?
Yeah, sure. So, you don't need to be a fancy CEO like Damian at all. So it's not about your title in terms of what we're looking for in Williamson readiness. It's a mindset. It's a willingness to question yourself and what you're looking for from your life and how that actually feeds out to everything that you are doing. It is a thirst for learning, a thirst and a willingness to learn and engage with others who are different from you. And it's a sense that there is something else out there and something else that is more to life that we are looking for. And, there are folks in our program who are in their mid to late 20s, and there are folks who are in their 60s, right? And there is leadership that is being exercised by all of them in different avenues of their life. And it's not just about your title. And our recruitment process will help to bring that out, so it won't exclude you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Laurel.
Hey Nathan, hey
Hi.
everybody, thanks for coming. Awesome session. I'm really glad actually to hear the stories. My question is, going through the course to the alumni, was there any observations from those closest to you, whether they were colleagues or family or friends, and that they were starting to feed back observations to you? And could you maybe share an observation that you got that you were either most proud or most humbled by, you know, so I can kind of get that visceral sense of this is what visibly happened? Or is that too personal?
Hi, I can start. Thanks. That's a really interesting question. I think one of us already alluded to the fact that there's constant learning and reflection on the year, you know, throughout the year and then after the year, and probably I would also hope for years to come. I think some of the progress that you might make in the way that you operate in the world and the way that you lead, whether that's, again, you know, in your family or in your professional life, in your you know, voluntary roles, might not actually look a lot different, but perhaps it's the way that you do things that might be different. I didn't have any specific feedback, I guess, you know, but part of the process that you go through when you ask your close friends and colleagues for some feedback about your values, that's when I guess that feedback came through about who they viewed me as. But I guess overall, I would say that it was noted that I was very involved and immersed in the program, and that I was perhaps thinking more deeply about decisions and about issues, you know, and whether they were technical or adaptive and that sort of thing. But yeah, overall, nothing really specific, but I think it's more a general thing. And I think there will be more things to come in the future that I can attribute to my Williamson time.
One thing that I hear is that people come to the program because they've seen other people in their organisations come through Williamson, and they can see them operating at a whole new level, and they go, "I want me some of that." So that's one thing in terms of observations of people coming through the program. The other thing actually is we had a recruiter do the program, and what drew him to the program is that all the people that he interviewed for roles that had done Williamson seemed to give them far more profound answers to his questions than the people who hadn't done the program. So if that gives you any guidance, yeah, that might help you. Oh, Damian.
I'm just going to break my own rule here. To Joe's point before about comfort zone, one thing I learned was to not talk all the time, and so I've deliberately not tried to put my hand up too often, but I just can't let this pass. My team was changing at the time, so I didn't get the reflection that was just asked about, but I've always been pretty vulnerable in trying to lead people, but these days it's just with complete confidence. I don't walk into a room with an answer. I walk in wanting to hear from other people. I think that was probably the biggest change for me over the time. Anyway, I'm sorry, I just had to squeeze it in. I know we're at 1:02.
Yeah.
That is so wonderful, and like that's actually got to be really hard to share. So thanks, Katie and David and Nathan.
Thank you. Well, thanks everyone for your questions. I hope you got a lot out of it. Yeah, thanks, Damian. Also, that idea of leading without answers just came through again as a theme. We have a tradition now at the Williamson Community Leadership Program where we thank all of our speakers with a special pair of socks. And Lisa is going to share, there you are, share a picture of the socks. So these socks were designed by a Williamson alumna called Laura Thompson, who is founder of Clothing the Gaps. You might have heard of that terrific social enterprise. And so whilst I can't actually give you the socks physically, I can tell you a story, I think, that links back to the Boonwurrung people, which I acknowledged at the start of the event. Which is that the months of February and March were known to the Boonwurrung people as the Waigabil Nai Iwan, or Old Man's Son. Waigabil Nai Iwan was also known as the eel season. So the female eels began their long journey down the Birrarung, which we know, of course, today as the Yarra, and the small creeks and rivers that run into Nerm, now known as Port Phillip Bay. And with the arrival of Parib, or spring, the eels began returning from their long journey. And the return of the eels was celebrated through the dances and the nagi held during Parib. And the eels that returned were salty but plump, and some were roasted over hot coals, the fat causing the coals to flare. And some were preserved to be eaten at a later time. The migration of the eels provided certainty for the Boonwurrung. The old people had always told them that as surely as the sun would rise every day, the eels would always return in Parib. And the numbers of eels leaving and returning each year was a sign of prosperity. And so just as the eels returning were a sign of a healthy ecosystem, so too are our Williamson alumni returning to share their experiences of the program. And it is a sign of a healthy and engaged community of leaders that we seek to foster at Leadership Victoria. So thank you. Applications for the Williamson Community Leadership Program are now open until Monday, the 1st of August. So thank you all for your time this afternoon.